This fresh coat of the startup life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. We got a big time guest in the building today. We got Bryan Barringer, the Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at CBU, Christian Brothers University, based here in Memphis, Tennessee. How's it going, B Squared?
It's going great.
Awesome stuff, man. You ready to pour some knowledge in Startup Nation today?
Let's do it.
Awesome stuff. As always, Startup Nation, my name is Dominic Lawson. This is the Startup Life Podcast, and it is powered by the Binge Podcast Network. So first things first, Bryan, man, let's just dive into it. Tell us your origin story. What's your path of entrepreneurship up until this point?
That's a long history, and I'll try to make it as short as possible.
All right.
It's I'm a second generation serial entrepreneur. I've
Right.
been doing this for 30 years. Started my first business with my dad when I was about 10 or 11 years old.
Right.
Started a retail shop doing video rentals in the early 80s. And he kind of saw in me the same thing he had, which was that entrepreneurial spirit. So he would just started out with just asking me my idea because I was a resident video geek in the house. And before I knew it, I was managing 3 people in 2 shifts, 13 years old at
Wow.
the video store. And I don't think I ever turned back from that entrepreneurial lifestyle. I think I've reluctantly tried to leave it a few times. I went and worked at FedEx for a little while.
Gotcha.
In Jude. But even when I was there, I was doing entrepreneurial work.
Right.
I kind of knew where my skill set was and my passion and drive was. So they always gave me projects that were very entrepreneurial, just inside of a major corporation. But other than that, I've bookended all those other corporate gigs with just either side hustles or startups or first employee type of things of a few startups.
Right.
All the way up until just recently, I had a business about a year ago that really, for another long story, but really wasn't panning out much, so we decided to close the business. Then at that point, I decided that I wanted to take all that 30 years of knowledge that I built and kind of start mentoring and advising other entrepreneurs. So
I hear that.
I've just been doing it from the ground level for so many years, and now I couldn't bring myself away from or bring myself to leaving that lifestyle, but I just do it in a different way.
Gotcha.
Like that uncle that used to play with the kids and give it back to give the company back to the entrepreneur with some
Right.
advice and guidance and everything else, and then let them run with it. So it's a good life. I love it.
Awesome stuff. Well, let me ask you this, man. So, you talked about you tried to leave the lifestyle a few times. So, like, what do you think that kept pulling you back in? Like, what is it about the entrepreneurial lifestyle? Just like, I feel like this is where I should be, or at least at the very least in the.
I mean, I think the easy answer is aggravation would lead. It caused me to leave the entrepreneurial life, and then actually that same aggravation caused me to leave the life I was escaping to.
Gotcha.
I think entrepreneurs, we have a way about us, and it's growing generation by generation. But we definitely want to be kind of the scriptors of our own domain, right?
Absolutely.
Our own destiny, and kind of forge our own existence. And it's not that we're adverse to authority or responsibility of working
Right.
for or with others. It's just that we want to be at the point of creation of things.
Absolutely.
And that conception of when an idea starts to come to fruition, and you then figure out all the things you need to do to execute. So I think a lot of those times I left because of, financial risk and different things. It was like, I want a paycheck for a little while. I want that insurance, maybe
Right.
a little 401. And inevitably I would do that and take that 401 and spend it on my next startup, right? Because I just couldn't get away from the culture. And a lot of times I just wanted to be doing more than just having my single faceted job, right? I wanted to be able to be responsible for all the facets that come with building a startup or an idea.
For sure.
So it's really, it's a pretty similar reason why it drove me away and why it keeps bringing me back.
Gotcha. Tell me a little bit about the video store game, man. Like, I think it's fascinating that, your dad had the foresight, if you will, to kind of see, like this, watching movies at the house kind of thing is kind of going to be a thing. So kind of walk me through that a little bit, if you would.
He's an amazing dude. I mean, he's my father, so I'm obviously very partial.
Absolutely,
To him,
right.
He's the smartest man I know. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he was doing things that I teach now 35 years later.
I hear that.
He understood customer discovery. He understood looking at the market and seeing what trends were there, and then gambling on some of those trends. I mean, remember, this is the early 80s, so some of the startup nation that I'm talking to here might remember back that time, some of them not, but at that time there was a huge war over VHS versus beta, which were two different formats.
That's right.
And it was a real gamble, but the one thing that he didn't gamble on was he knew that this one of the two was going to win, and that videos at home and watching content at home as opposed to going to the movie theater
Absolutely.
was going to grow. And it really started with me and my total fascination of being a fanboy of Star Wars, right? I mean,
Right.
May 78, Star Wars comes out. He gets a bootleg copy of it on VHS, which is probably the reason why we chose VHS, because that's what it was.
Fair enough.
I watched it 178 times before the tape finally just
gave out.
Right. In fact, the video was no longer there. It was mostly snow. So all I had was audio. But in my mind, I could still play the video.
Right.
But, he looked at that, and I'm 9 years old at the time, 10 years old, and he looked at that and started understanding that, this is a trend. This is going to be something that's there. So he started doing market research. He found another video rental store in Louisiana and went and talked to them because we had family in Louisiana. So when on a family trip, we did some real life customer discovery and walked into the store and talked to the owner and realized it's not a cheap venture to do because videos were very expensive.
Right.
He knew also that not everyone had them, so we bought video players that he rented. And then I would learn and teach myself how to repair those because it would break all the time because of a rental property and everything else. So we just did a lot of customer research and really got to know the industry very well, got to know our customers very well. And then we actually pivoted and opened a pizza delivery store and started delivering pizzas and movies, right? Because it was
kind of go hand in hand, right?
People wanted to have, this is the early days of Domino's and Pizza Hut delivery and everything else. So he just did a really good job of understanding the market. And this is stuff I teach about every day at CBU around market feasibility studies and research and customer discovery. And so that's where really the story began. And like I said earlier, he saw something in me that I really wanted to plug in more and more and be on the ground level of building these things. And, he built that trust in me. And I've been paying him back every day by, leading that life.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. When you talk about the war between VHS and Betamax, it kind of reminds me of not too long ago, kind of like between HD DVD and Blu-ray, kind of similar to that. So so I appreciate you sharing all of that for sure. So I want to ask you this, just kind of switching gears a little bit, because I know you're a graduate and mentor of an amazing accelerator we have here at Startco here in Memphis. And so, when you're, mentoring and sharing that guidance, with you will, with some of those newly minted founders, if you will, what are some of those things, those 1 to 2 things you're really trying to stress to those founders?
I won't talk about it again, but the first thing is customer discovery.
For sure.
Entrepreneurs, they have these cognitive biases, right? They believe their idea is great, and they also believe that they're going to need to keep it very close to the best so no one else will steal it, right?
Right.
And so that's one thing we try to work with them on that I learned firsthand by being a part of Startco, and then I've mentored for the 4 years since I graduated there, is, look, you got to be more open about your idea, because the more people you talk to, the better your idea is going to be. The better you can execute on the idea, the more you're going to understand your customer base, the more that's going to inform your product or service, right?
Right.
The other thing is I was talking to an entrepreneur just yesterday that's launched a business here recently, and that's about funding. Funding is this big, scary thing, and it can be. I mean, you're talking about taking on someone else's money and then vowing to them, that you're going to give them a return on investment. You understand there's no guarantees, and they know that.
Right.
Most of the time, this is a big fear factor. And then I'm also, in relation to that, I also, I try to get entrepreneurs to understand that, just because you have that 401 and just because you have a little bit of money in savings doesn't mean that you necessarily have to spend all that money on your idea. Sure, it's great to put in some initial investment in your own belief, but don't always see it as something that that you don't want to go asking anybody for money because you want to keep all the control. That sounds a little weird, so let me just elaborate just a little bit. Which is like, when you have a limited amount of resources, and that resources is part of your lifeblood, right? It's keeping your lights on, it's making the car payments and tuition payments and everything else. You're almost limiting yourself on your scope. Right. You're almost more fearful of what will fail and what will break down that's going to cost you to spend more of your personal hard-earned money. Now, what you want to do is spend someone else's personal hard-earned money. For sure. They're conditioned to understand what loss and risk is because they're investors, right? So the idea is you need to have a great idea and a very fleshed out execution plan, but when you go talk to those investors, you want them to believe in enough that they're going to give you the money. To me, when you start bringing on funding, your ability to visualize success is enhanced. You start to understand that, yes, money is on the line, but I need to do something with this money, and I don't need to be so risk averse because I won't be able to pay my power bill at the end of the month. Right. And so a lot of times I see these people doing this problem of spending too little money too often or asking for too little money too often, right? I'm going to spend $10,000 here, I'm going to spend $20,000 here, and that's going to give me 6 weeks down the road or 8 weeks down the road. When you bring on investment and you bring it on at the C level of $200,000 to $500,000, that gives you 12 to 18 months to execute on the plan and actually hit some real milestones. And then you're able to go and get that follow-on funding to reach new levels. So, there's this whole, and we can talk for hours about funding, but I bet there's this whole misnomer that funding is bad or funding is required or I can do it all myself and bootstrap it. And that certainly happens, but I've found that more people that are willing to take on investment go further faster than those that are trying to bootstrap everything through their own funds. Gotcha.
Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. Startup Nation, I want to kind of shift gears here because you wrote a piece in September of 2014.
Okay, now we're going back.
and the name of it is entitled, Take It From a Serial Entrepreneur, The Age of Small Business is Now. And in it, you describe that there are so many things at our disposal that, that will allow us to succeed. So now here it is, 2019. Is that window getting larger? Is it getting smaller? What's your take on it now?
Let me tell you, Startup Nation, it is blown up. I mean, now, it's back to funding, it is drying up a little bit because people are getting a little bit more cautious just because of the state of the economy.
For sure.
That's going to be a cycle. It's fighting itself. And in 12 to 18 months, it's going to be back to where it needs to be. But that's a needed cycle that has happened because of how much funding has come from Silicon Valley and everything else. But the money's out there, right? And the money and investment, you got brand new investors that have never been investors before. You got celebrity investors, you got sports investors. And they're not just investing in other things related to business. They're looking into startups. They're looking into new money. And so you got a lot of people investing. So I think you have a lot of that's come to play that's even more than 2014. And when I was writing that article, this is the dawn of the age of crowdfunding and Indiegogo and Kickstarter and different mechanisms to get funding not related to a certain investor. But just in general, investment dollars are bigger and more prevalent, especially away from the Silicon Valley and to more of the general population of the nation. The other thing that I think is just blown up is the entrepreneurial ecosystems city by city. Absolutely. Companies, institutions, higher education institutions, city governments, they're all seeing, there's two parts of this, they're all seeing that entrepreneurialism is the way to, the same philosophy we've always had around small businesses being the backbone of the economy. For sure. Entrepreneurialism is still that, and it's growing on a daily basis. And there's more people willing to jump off on that because of the volatility of their current jobs. I hear that. After the government shutdown this last year, a large percentage of those individuals spun off businesses because they had to create something to keep funds in. That's true. Well, they kept going in those businesses, right? So in those areas, times of diversity and divisiveness, those are opportunities for people that are entrepreneurial to jump off and say, okay, now is the time and I'm going to do that. And the ecosystems that they have around them in their cities, especially Memphis, have gotten so much stronger in the last 5 years that there's a whole group of individuals that are willing to step forward and help, like myself, advise and mentor and invest. And the way I think these cities have grown into being is like a rising tide lifting all boats, right? So we're all coming all in to help the small business. And one other thing that I think is really, really important to understand is there's the generations that are coming out. You know, my generation, the X generation, was coming off the baby boomers, which is coming off the silent generation. We also refer to them as the greatest generation.
Right.
You know, these generations, we saw, you know, a pursuit of life of excess almost, right? And we started businesses, but not nearly as much as we're seeing now. The Z generation, according to a few polls like Pew and Gallup and research houses, 44% of the Z generation, when asked what they want to do with their life, they say they want to be entrepreneurial.
Right.
Right. And now we have esports and gaming that are becoming huge billion-dollar industries.
Absolutely.
I mean, the esports and e-gaming world is going to rival the NFL and MLB and all these different things what the leagues are creating now inside of 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And they're not going to be just done in big cities. You're going to have tournaments in every city in America, and it's going to bring, I mean, so Adidas and Nike and all these companies are putting in endorsement money, and Twitch and Amazon are putting in money. So there's these environments that are very conducive towards entrepreneurialism, and then you have a generation that's very much driven to be entrepreneurial. So I think it's grown a lot in 5 years. I think what we're going to see in the next 5 years is going to be truly amazing.
It's funny you mentioned esports, Bryan, because you know just recently there's a very popular video game streamer named Ninja who just got an endorsement deal from Adidas, right? And so like to see how esports has grown over the past few years, and I think Comcast is getting ready to build like a 20,000 seat arena just for esports.
Well, and Ninja walked away from Twitch, right?
Right.
He was making millions of dollars a month in subscriber revenue. But he walked away because he wanted to launch a league. He wanted to be a part of the ground level of that next thing. And so you have EA Sports, and you have all these different gaming houses that are putting money into it. You have institutions like college campuses giving scholarships. To gamers.
Absolutely.
Not just game developers.
Right. Gamers. Right.
You know, so it's like this huge. So we accuse these younger generations, the post-millennials and the Z generation, of sitting on their ass all day playing games. But lo and behold, it's a viable career opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I think it's amazing.
Absolutely. And it's not even that, but just even the offshoots, not even just the direct gamers, but now you have Fortnite consultants, who are
the auxiliary
exactly that support the main business.
Right. Amazing. I mean, I don't know what's taboo to talk about here, but the cannabis thing is the same thing.
No,
it's
absolutely.
That industry, as it's being normalized and legalized, decriminalized, and moving through the path of decriminalization and medical and everything else. Growing and dispensing are great, but big business opportunities. But like you just said, all of the service areas that support that are really where a lion's share of the total revenue is being generated to support these supply chains, logistics. They just are talking about making banking available to dispensaries and everything else. That's modernizing and mainstreaming
and giving credibility, for sure.
E-gaming, I'm a big watcher of the e-gaming, a big watcher of the cannabis side, a big watcher of space, and what's going on in the space world.
Right.
Also, again, an area of opportunity for those that are going to be supporting companies going to space. It's an amazing time to be alive.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears a little bit because, you're at CBU and we're here in Tennessee. And so I recently had Dr. Amy Cathy of the University of Tennessee Business School there in Knoxville. And I asked her this question, and I want to share it with you because here in Tennessee, we're starting to see more and more companies come into the state from, California, elsewhere, stuff like that. Our past two governors were kind of business-minded, the current and the former one just now. So I guess I want to get your take on entrepreneurship and specifically in the state of Tennessee and how it's evolved over the past couple of years. Can you guys just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier, city governments are stepping up. I mean, we have a program called the 800 Initiative, which is specifically around helping minority-based businesses grow. Here in the state of Tennessee and the city of Memphis, there's 69,000 privately owned firms here in Memphis. 39,800 of those are owned by minority-based business owners.
Right.
About 39,000 of those are very small, less than a couple of employees or no employees. But even though they make up, a large percentage, well over 60% of the total number of businesses, they only bring in about 2.7% of the total revenue, right? So there's this huge disparity. So the city government and the county government, and then also from private investments by FedEx and the Kresge Foundation and some companies like Pathway Lending, bringing in a lot of capital, and then also in partnership with the Epicenter, Startco, CBU, and the city and county of Memphis and Shelby, coming together to help these businesses grow. And so we've also had the people from Nashville come in and Chattanooga come in and talk about this. So what we're seeing is a trend that's starting to grow around community development, specifically around entrepreneurship, though.
Right, for sure.
Around putting money and time and investment and intellectual capital and personnel into these businesses to help them grow. And that's going to happen here. It's going to happen in Nashville. It's going to happen in Murfreesboro and Chattanooga. And it's kind of growing as a state. Launch Tennessee does a great job of sponsoring these programs and building up entrepreneurship across the state. So it's a trend that we're seeing all across the Mid-South and the state for sure.
For sure. And it really does seem like not just Memphis, but the state as a whole really is open for business, in regards to entrepreneurship and everything else. So I appreciate you sharing that for sure. So I want to ask you this because, one of the big behemoths in business in general has been Apple. And as of yesterday of this recording, they just announced that they're releasing a new iPhone. They're releasing a new streaming service and stuff like that. I want to ask you this. What is something that Apple gets right? And what is it that you think there are some challenges that they have going forward?
I think they learned a lesson last year with the X. They rolled out a bigger, badder phone and put a big, bad price tag on it. Right? And kind of priced themselves out of the market. That's something they've done several times in the last 40 years. Right. So say what you will between Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, but Tim's a smart business person. He knows that he needs to write his shit. Steve Jobs used to just say, "I'm going to change the industry." Tim tends to understand that he needs to ride the wave of the industry, still set the tone, but at the same time listen to his customers and understand what they're willing to do. So with the 11 coming out, first of all, it's got a lot of great technology on board with it. It's got the 3 cameras for the pros and everything else. The price tag didn't raise, and that was what they've done every iteration up until the 10. Right. In fact, some of those new 10, the 11s are cheaper than what their counterpart was with the X's, right? So I think what they've done right is still keeping up with the technology that people demand, because we're a content creation generation, but not pricing things out so much that the average consumer can't afford it.
Gotcha.
You can't just build technology only for the wealthy to have. And you can't build technology every year forcing people to want to change that technology that they are still investing in just 12 months ago. So for sure. It's one of those things where you gotta figure out the right pace of technology, but the willingness of your customers to actually spend money on that technology.
For sure.
And if you price it out, it doesn't matter how great the technology is, no one can afford it.
Right.
I think Apple's kind of righting themselves with this last release. I was pretty impressed yesterday when I saw what they had to offer.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this, because this is one of the things that I've kind of thought of when it comes to Apple and stuff like that. When it comes to iPhone, it's usually like, that's what they're kind of known for the large part. Is Apple a one-trick pony?
People have said that about them every time they have a major release, and they keep coming up with another trick.
Gotcha.
And, with their design head leaving recently,
right.
I think that might's going to take a hit from an ergonomic design perspective, but they have a great design team, they have a great design history, and Tim Cook is not lost on design, right? So I think they're always going to do well in that regard. I never count Apple out. I mean, I might have an Android in my pocket right now, but everything else I have is Mac-based. And it's just, like I said, I never count them out. So I don't think they're a one-trick pony.
All right.
I think they'll figure something out.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. This fresh coat of the startup life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you. The Startup Life is powered by Ladder. Startup Nation, as an entrepreneur, you are the engine that powers your business. We have had many entrepreneurs on the show, from those that played Division II basketball, quite a few Ironman participants, and even an NFL quarterback. And the one thing they all have in common is that they know getting early morning workout wins leads to business success for the day. However, it's super important what fuel you use for your workout to get that early morning success. And that's where Ladder comes in. Ladder is a sports nutrition company founded by LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unlike other supplements, every batch is tested by a third party that is trusted by all major professional sports organizations, including the NBA, NFL, MLB, and more, to verify the highest standards for quality, but more importantly, safety. Ladder's goal is to help you unlock your best in any situation. Right now, that means access to special offers and expert advice from their community. Personally, I like superfood greens. Not only does it include the most essential nutrients that are hard to get in your diet, like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and vitamin D, they also included the Rodelio root, which helps keep you healthier when stress is high, but also it helps support immunity according to many studies. Use code BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off everything site-wide at ladder.sport. That's BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off at ladder.sport. So maybe you're not trying to be a 4-time league MVP or a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but you still need the tools to elevate your health that elevates your business. So go with Ladder and prepare to get better every day. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. So, Bryan, man, tell us about, your role here at CBU and stuff like that, man.
Yeah, I couldn't have dreamt up a better job
for sure
for myself. I mean, a year and a half ago, I was closing down a business that just wasn't working out for a long story of reasons. And I was looking for something to do. A friend of mine at University of Memphis, Mike Hoffmeyer, it's a Career Center for Entrepreneurship. He's like, man, why don't we do a student accelerator every year? Why don't you just come in and coach them on pitching and see what drives you? And that was a Tuesday, and then he asked me to come back on the Thursday, and then one of the students asked to meet with me on a Friday, and then another team asked me to come and meet with them on Monday. Then I chose to come in on Tuesday.
Gotcha.
And like by that next week, he's like, man, do you want a job? And I was like, yeah. It was a little bit about the paycheck at the time, but mostly it was about just having something to do. But it wasn't about just having something to do to fill my time.
Right.
What I fell in love with was mentoring and advising young adults. And I speak a lot about, we already talked about this Z generation and the post-millennials, where they are right now and how entrepreneurial they are. So it really just it hit me like a ton of bricks, but this is what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I always wanted to be back on the academic side of the world and teach, and everything else was kind of a goal of mine when I graduated a long time ago. So then 6 months into it, CBU puts out a job for a director of entrepreneurship and innovation. And I'm very community impact oriented. So they had the 800 initiative that was part of the program. We want to build an educational program system on teaching entrepreneurship, and I have a lot of interest there. And they also said, we want to do other things, but we don't know what those other things are, Bryan. We want, someone to come in and really figure out what those other things, and those other things are actually creating more businesses with students and faculty and alumni.
Right.
So it became a community impact component, an educational component, which I love, and then a deal flow business creation component. So for a guy like me, who's been doing startups for 30 years and now has decided that he wants to, kind of share what I learned. This is like, I couldn't have written a job description that was better than that myself. So I applied for it, and I'm a very, non-academic, non-traditional kind of person in that regard.
Got you.
And I thought when I went to interview that I was going to be summarily dismissed every time I gave an answer, because I was very, very transparent. And every time I said an answer, they're like, "That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for." And there was a lot of great candidates that were applying for the job.
I imagine so.
I just kind of hoped that I was going to get the opportunity, and they called me in May and said, "When can you start?" And I haven't looked back since.
Right. And it goes back to your thing you were saying earlier about municipalities and state government, stuff like that, but definitely higher institutions understanding the impact of entrepreneurship to where, when you gave those answers, like, that's exactly what you're looking for. What they're looking for, sorry.
I agree totally. I mean, these higher education systems are starting to realize that they're having difficulty recruiting and retaining students.
Absolutely.
Customers.
Right, for sure.
Let's call them what
for
they
sure.
are. And they generate revenue for the institution.
Right.
The numbers are declining, right? So any business that's looking at a decline in customer base needs to figure something out.
Right.
And us as a society now, we're looking at all the student debt. There's 45 million people in this country that have student debt.
Right.
It's like, how do we reinvent the educational system to better serve our customers, to make them want to come to the thing, but actually serve their needs, not just see them as a revenue generation.
For sure.
And so that's really where the higher education systems are really starting to see entrepreneurialism. And we go back to that statistics I said earlier.
Absolutely.
Where the Z generation, 45% of them want to be entrepreneurs. Okay, well, that fits into the customer base.
Absolutely.
So let's build entrepreneurialism in the campus. Let's build it in the education. Let's not just say it's a school of business, which is important to creating businesses, but let's bring in the School of Engineering. Let's bring in the liberal arts schools.
Right.
Entrepreneurs come in all flavors and
yes,
varieties.
they do.
And CBU, by the grace of God, is a very inclusive, mission-oriented institution.
They
saw that as, okay, we're going to disrupt the status quo, and we're going to do it in modern ways by bringing entrepreneurialism, but we're still going to teach to our mission of enter to learn, lead to serve, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is all just this beautiful kind of fertile ground of an opportunity, and it's a trend. So other higher education, so Rhodes wants to start doing some cross-campus pollination of entrepreneurialism.
For sure.
We want to reach out to Lamont and Owen too, and do some things there.
For sure.
To the other institutions in town, work with the University of Memphis, the Cruise Center, and try to build a higher education entrepreneurialism network here in town.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And Startup Nation, if you're looking for a higher, learning institution and you want to really dive into entrepreneurship, we have a link in the show notes for CBU if that's something that you're interested in. And make sure, probably get in contact with Bryan a little bit, talk about that a little bit. We'll have that contact information and internet link in the show notes for easy access. So we're here at Crosstown Concourse, which has just been remodeled the past about a couple of years and stuff like that. And you're here in this facility here. So tell us about the magic that's going to go on here in this room at 462 in Crosstown Concourse, man.
Yeah, we know we have to have a presence on campus, but we want to have a presence in the community as
For
well.
sure.
And
For sure.
There's nothing better in this city right now. I mean, there's some great things in the city.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, but Crosstown, this is the place
Right
now. I mean, we're going to have some great stuff going over by FedEx Forum. It's also going to be a great community. But right now, Crosstown is the place to be. And we jumped in with both feet. We have a suite up here on the 4th floor. We have 3 training bays, and we have some common areas and some collaboration areas. And we're talking about maybe restructuring a little bit to have a little bit more collaboration, some pod-based working so teams can work together. But the whole idea of this place was to get something that's off campus but still represents our campus, so the general population of Memphis can plug into our systems.
I hear that.
So we teach institutional leadership workshops here. We teach some of our master's programs here. So when the adults that are working all day, they need a place to go. They come here. They either go to our campus or come here. And now that I'm here, we're going to start doing a lot of more entrepreneurial programming here as well.
Okay.
Those are going to be pitch competitions and hackathons and 48-hour launches. Working with teams like Startco, which you've been at.
Absolutely.
Light Memphis is right across the hallway
For sure.
at Crosstown High School. Having them come in here, we've actually already sponsored one of their students do a college prep course here.
Nice.
So this whole space, I mean, we invested in Crosstown like a lot of people have, and we really want to utilize it. We're going to activate it a lot in the next several months.
Sweet stuff. Once again, that contact information for everything at CBU and what Bryan's doing here is in the show notes for easy access. I want to switch gears a little bit if I could, because on LinkedIn, you loved the article that was entitled, we spend too much time celebrating startups and not enough time celebrating the keep goings, if you will. And so, why is that? Like, why do we just really give a whole lot of praise to the startups, but not to the person who's been in 5, 6, 7 years, who kind of struggled through the, the tough spots?
Yeah.
Why is that? What is that all about?
I think that's changing a little bit.
Okay.
Since I probably like that.
Fair enough.
I think with companies like Sweet Bio and SomaVac,
For sure.
that have been at it for 4 or 5 years, and now are seeing really great strides and success and making revenue and everything else. But I do think that a lot of times in a lot of communities, and I think this community was guilty of it early on several years ago, of startups was just that
It's trendy.
flashy new thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was like startup. But at the same time, there was kind of a mission to that, right? The more, it's like a numbers game. The more startups we started and generated, the more we put an emphasis on starting something. StartCrow's got a great saying. It's about start something and never stop, right? And that's really where it's kind of turned into, not just start and startups, but really pushing it out there. And I've seen too many trends, especially on the West Coast a lot, where it's like, let me give you $250,000 for something you wrote on a napkin, right? And it's like a spray and pray and spray and play kind of thing,
Right.
Pay to play, however you want to think about it. And all that was doing was kind of forcing people to generate idea after idea after idea, but lack in execution.
Right.
They get $250 of easy money, they do their R&D, they decide, that's not for me, and they don't do anything that relates to the never stop or the execution side. So I think Memphis has done a good job of not just buying into the flashy new thing.
I hear that.
But I've seen some trends over the last few years of really where I've seen other cities kind of put too much emphasis, too much funding into that startup and not enough into that long-term second phase, third phase growth of the company.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. So I saw that you recently celebrated a wedding anniversary. So
wow, you did deep.
Congratulations.
I appreciate that.
Look, man, I'm kind of a somewhat,
audience, right?
yes, somewhat, for sure.
She's my co-founder.
Absolutely.
She and I started that business that I talked about earlier 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the business didn't kill the relationship.
Hey, that was up.
We got married a year ago this past Sunday, and so I appreciate that. Yeah,
awesome stuff. No worries. So I guess I want to know how important has Chelsea been, in helping you, with your career, and just how supportive has she been? Talk about Chelsea a little bit.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs will be able to. I mean, Startup Nation, you'll probably be shaking your head up and down because you've heard people in your life saying, "Why can't you be normal?"
Got you.
And my dad's always said to me, "It's like, who's defining normal for you?" Because he's always not been normal. Because he, like I said, I'm a second generation entrepreneur. I mean, he's had that too. So, but I've had other people in my life that cared about me greatly, but that just didn't feel I was right in the head, right?
Gotcha.
Didn't feel I was normal. But that's the entrepreneurialism, the entrepreneur in me.
Right.
Chelsea, who, just, the love of my life, is like, not just because I love her deeply, but she's also just like me. She is an entrepreneur.
She gets
herself.
you.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's like, what's normal? Who the hell cares about normal, right? Let's define our own normality. And that's our normal.
Right.
And so she's just a strong supporter of my dreams, my aspirations. I am likewise to her in kind as far as that goes. And that really, makes us very much goal driven, right? So we set goals for ourselves, both personally, professionally, and in support of each other. And it's just an amazing relationship.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing that. So I also saw on social media that, you are, an Auburn alum. So I feel obligated to go War Eagle, right? Absolutely. For sure. And I saw that you shared a graphic of duck hunt. It was a kind of variation of duck hunt where a tiger was holding up 2 ducks because the Auburn Tigers just played the Oregon Ducks.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like if you're sharing stuff like that, you're a gamer. You talked about e-gaming and esports and stuff like that. Favorite game?
Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid. Okay.
One of my things. Snake
All right.
was one of my favorites. All the Splinter Cell, the Tom Clancy ones.
Okay.
And so
Ghost Recon too?
yeah.
Okay.
So I love all of the battlefields and everything else. I mean, I
Gotcha.
used to be very much of a single first person shooter kind of thing.
Okay.
And I came up with Doom and some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got into the team-based games with some of the Battlefield type games, and then I just stopped.
Gotcha.
Right? And
Fair
then it was like, okay, these games have now reached well beyond my capacity to keep up with.
Oh,
the
yes.
graphics,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's almost like the processing power of gaming consoles.
Right.
It's far outpaced my ability to mentally keep up.
Gotcha.
And so I found myself going back to recruit mode and aim assist mode.
Gotcha.
And all these different things. I'm
Yeah.
like, look, I'm cheating. I do like the Battlefront Star Wars things when they come
Okay.
out. So every time they come out with a new one, I spend
Check
about
those out.
99 hours just nailing through that thing, and I'm done. So like a 2-week period, I'm out. But I don't play much games as far as that goes. But
Fair enough.
my son is a huge gamer, and he does a lot of NBA stuff and
Mm-hmm.
football and Fortnite a little bit, Legends and some of those things. But I kind of live vicariously through him and let him beat the crap out of me in NBA every once in a while.
So big 2K
I
player,
have to
huh?
handicap him every time we play. Right? It's like, no, you cannot have LeBron. I'm sorry, it's not happening.
Fair enough. So, like I said, we talked about you graduating from Auburn University. So I want to ask you this. If you had to start a company with either Charles Barkley, Cam Newton, Bo Jackson, and this last one is me trolling you a little bit, Gus Malzahn, who would you start one and why?
If you troll me, you know which one of those it's not.
I know.
I mean, I love my Auburn Tigers, and I'm a diehard fan.
Right.
I support them, win or lose. That's what Auburn people do. And I'm going to keep my comments about Gus to myself. I think we have a coaching issue, and we've been saying the fan base has been saying that for a while.
Right.
The people writing contracts don't seem to be on the same board. He's got a great agent. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
Bo Jackson, would
Okay.
be the 3. I love Charles Barkley, and I love Cam Newton as well. Cam is a great impact-oriented individual. He knows about brand very well. He
For sure.
the Cam brand extremely well. Charles Barkley is an incredibly intelligent person. He doesn't get nearly enough credit. I mean,
Right.
he's a big guy that everyone thinks is kind of silly and everything else, but he's incredibly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a big fan of mine. And Charles and Bo, when I was going through school, they were there.
Right.
So, or a little bit before me, but not too much.
Right.
But Bo Jackson, you want to talk about brand. Right? Bo knows Bo.
Right.
Bo is an entrepreneur. Bo has several businesses. He lives in Auburn. He is a strong supporter of the community. He's a strong supporter of the kids. He came from a very, very, very rough rural background outside of Birmingham. Football saved his life. I mean, he was in gangs. He was definitely in a bad state. I mean, the man is incredibly intelligent but could barely speak. I mean, his story is inspirational, and he has come so far and had such great opportunities. I mean, he was one of the most athletic individuals we've ever seen.
Right.
Dual sport threat, and would do things on both the field, baseball, and in the field of football that no one can imagine. Still, we see highlights of him running up the green wall to catch the ball.
It's true.
But he's also a great entrepreneur, and he's a great father, great mentor, great supporter of the Auburn Nation, and I would bend over backwards to start a business with him.
I hear that.
Jackson, for sure.
I hear that. Let me ask you this: who is a leader that you admire that has never opened a business, never started a business?
That's a good question. The first person when you asked that was my mom.
Okay.
Although she was always someone who worked at our businesses, she was always the type of person who was also a little bit fearful of what those businesses and how those businesses could fail.
For sure.
But when she would get into those things, she would lead with such empathy, right? She would manage the business with such empathetic values.
For sure.
That she really understood that you had to support your team, you had to support your people, and you had to listen to your customer, and you had to do these things. I mean, she was just a very good entrepreneur without ever giving her the title of being an entrepreneur. So it's one of those things where she's probably one that's had biggest influence on me and the softer skill side of things that's never started a business. But there's a lot of people around town that haven't taken that leap to do entrepreneurship that are still great supporters.
I hear that.
What I would create a business with if they were so inclined.
For sure.
But that's there's a lot of people like that.
For sure. What's your entrepreneurial superpower and why?
I can't fly. I can't disappear. I can't do all this normal. I think the thing that I feel like I'm really good at is seeing a product or service well beyond even what the entrepreneur sees it at.
I hear that.
The eye to me. I've just been around for so many times, and I've got one of those brains that it just never stops thinking. Unfortunately, I would love to turn it off sometimes, but it doesn't. So everything I see, and this is, my parents will tell you this from a very early age, is I was always taking apart things, wanting to figure out how they worked, wanting to build and create things. I look around and see anything that's in my eye's view and how I can make it better, or I even think about who made that, or if I were to go back in time, what businesses would I start? That are big things here now. I mean,
right.
I was thinking yesterday, just the red, yellow, green lights that we see. Who invented that thing? And who actually not invented the stoplights, but built the company that has every stoplight in America.
Right.
So my point in saying all that is I've always just looked at things and how they currently are, and what was the momentum or motivation for creating those, and what was the market that then made them successful,
right?
And then how can they be better? So being just a student of everything mechanical and non-mechanical in life, when I hear something and someone talks to me and someone like walks in and says they have a recycling business, right? I start asking them, okay, well, tell me more.
Right.
And then I'll start thinking along those lines and seeing the ideas that I might have towards where they could take that business,
right,
or what customers might think of that.
Okay.
So I think my superpower is kind of vision, right? Just seeing things in things that maybe other people don't.
All right, I hear that. So before I ask my last question, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the Startup Life podcast, powered by the Binge Podcast Network. We learned a lot of stuff from understanding customer discovery and understanding to take that risk with the customer discovery, and also market research. And also, one of the things you said, you didn't say this verbatim, but one of the things I took away was there's opportunity in chaos.
Yeah.
When you talked about, when people were losing their jobs and stuff like that, and they were trying to need some money to kind of still support their lifestyle or whatever case may be, there's opportunity in chaos. So think about that, Startup Nation, for sure. But thank you for all of that value, for sure. But now I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, because there's somebody in Startup Nation who's either they're afraid to start their business, or they feel stuck and they just want a path forward or whatever. So give them some words of motivation. Tell them it's okay to move forward.
Yeah. Look, take the leap. That's the best way of me saying it. If you have an idea, it's not going to go away. It's one of those things you're going to keep festering on and festering on and festering on. In today's world, there's great opportunities and resource systems out there in your city. You just got to open your eyes and look at it. Make sure you do your customer discovery and see how customers can really inform and better and evolve your product and your service. But just take that leap. And when you start something, never stop, right?
I hear that.
Now, I'm not saying that the business is going to be automatically successful, and at some point you don't need to stop doing that business because it's failing.
For sure.
But never stop your entrepreneurial journey, is what I'm saying. And so take the leap, start, never stop.
Gotcha. I hear that. So that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life podcast. Did you enjoy being on the show, my man?
I loved it.
Awesome.
I've done a few of these. This is the best one so far.
Awesome. Sure. I love hearing that. All right, Startup Nation.
If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. Startup Nation, do you have friends and loved ones that you want to do something nice for, but maybe they live in the next city, the next state, or even halfway around the world? Well, I have a solution for you. Koya is the new and best way to let your friends and family know you're thinking of them. Choose a friend, record a message, and hide it in a location that they are likely to visit, and give them a clue. When they arrive, your message will instantly appear. You can even send them a gift. Best of all, the app is completely free. Get Koya.com to download it now. That's KETKOYA.com. Or check the link in the show notes. Koya, show you care when you can't be there.